We are live. Feet to the fire.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way onto people, beat the callers into his way of thinking and extending his ego. Or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. Feet to the fire.
Pow! We are back and we are live. I'm your host, James Jancik, Black Knight of Talk Radio. Feet to the fire. You know, it is January 1st, 2014, which marks the couple of days will be the beginning of year 12 of Feet to the Fire Live. It started out, January 5th, 2003. I started doing the first live show. I was back on Live 365. I think they're still around, yeah. But it was way back in the very beginning days of doing the live radio thing. And I started the show just to talk about things that weren't normally talked about on the radio. Inspired by, of course, Art Bell, who made these things a household word across the nation. And what I wanted to do with his retirement was to continue that in my own way. Those who have listened to the show over the years can see the format is of the Art Bellian format because, well, you know, it's a good format. It's like a blues player playing the blues. You play the blues like the blues. Anyway, I wanted to take this time on the beginning of this new year to talk about a few things. First, I want to welcome people who are listening to this YouTube channel. Many people have found the show within this last year due to YouTube interviews that I have done and are not familiar with the audio show, which has been around, well, of course, way longer. So I want to welcome you. And I'm putting up this little video here as kind of a introduction to kind of say where the show is, what we do here, and where is it going and whatnot. Also to talk about kind of finding truth. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are truth seekers, want to try and find truth. What that translates into, unfortunately, and I believe me, I'm doing this show, I started it because I wanted to find truth. And when I found out what I'm about to say, then it was very disheartening. Most people don't want to find truth. They want to support their own belief or paradigm system. Obviously, if one steps out of the right-left paradigm in politics, one will see the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other and justifying their positions and, you know, finding out what's wrong with the other guy while not looking at themselves because they're not interested in truth. They're interested in winning in their paradigm. And, of course, it extends out into religion, philosophy, science, unfortunately, science included. I was big in science when I started up as a kid, following the moon landings, etc. And then I find out that science is also political, that it's not the facts or the theory that best fits them. It is those who come up with them have political power, keep it going for a while. And when those scientists die out, the new stuff can come in. Well, I found that all over. It's very discouraging, to say the least. So anyway, I started doing the show to do that. In the early years, all my archives are up online at feettothefireradio.com. And you can listen back to, not the first show because I lost the first few of them. They were on VHS tape, stereo, how's that? But you can hear it started out to be basically a nighttime talk show talking about stuff. And it evolved into a serious truth-seeking show where I literally don't have any preconceived biases. Let the people come on and present their cases, but then again, I don't give them free passes. I want them to be able to answer the questions and so on. And over the years, I'd have things like, even though I started in 2003, I didn't really get into the 9/11 questioning until several years later. Again, from guests that come on, presented their information, and I've grown to come up with my own. I don't want to call it beliefs, because a lot of people believe things from a non-analytical, non-spiritually meditative perspective. It's more that they have grown up believing this position, and so they defend it. A lot of people have switched camps and are now believers in that other camp, and again, they do the same thing, basically defend their position. But I came to decide that 9/11 was not as is presented to us by evidence, and so forth and so on. And I've done this by prerequisite of work, and this was in kind of in Bible study. I first started to question the parameters in the doctrines in the churches I have been affiliated with, and then did the research and came up with contradictions that they've held, and they weren't able to explain them, and so on. And I went on through there, brought that into the UFO / alternative history / conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, area, to let's look at the stuff and see what the evidence says, as opposed to trying to get a position like in 9/11, not to beat a horse, but there's the camp in 9/11 that says there were no planes. It was a hologram. And they'll push that view, and other people say it was a demolition. And they'll push that view. Other ones say it was some kind of energy weapon. And they'll push that view, and they'll exclude other things. What I have found, it's very important, what I have found is that the contradictions or the pieces that don't fit are the most important pieces, because it's very easy to take a consensus. It's very easy just to go along with, well, most of these things fit, we'll take that. But it is much better to focus on things that don't fit and try to see where they lead you. And that is why some have considered my approach of the lack of contradiction to be somewhat negative, meaning like I'm looking for faults. But the faults are the keys to finding truth. If you really want to know truth, you have to be non-contradictive in your position. Socrates, great mind, unfortunately very little left behind, and that we have to weed out of. Plato, who's a student who may have embellished the stuff that Socrates taught and infiltrated his own things in there. But Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And that is true, because when you live in a false paradigm, you're not living. You're acting. You're corralled in a particular view. And if reality is very real, and it will break your back when you cross it, so you must be aware of it. A great example would be someone who will step off a cliff and fall to the ground. You'll have a New Age philosophy like, well, it's only because you believe in gravity, and if you believe that you can fly, you can fly. And I say to them, I said, okay, let's see you walk off the cliff. Well, I just don't have enough faith yet, et cetera. And it's like, no, there's a reality out there. Now, that doesn't mean there's a key that when you get deep enough involved in understanding the reality, there may be a key to avoiding anti-gravity through some force of nature that has yet to be tapped, that may be linked to our consciousness. That's all fine. But we have to look at the evidence for that and see it and so forth. And a lot of excuses are given, well, mankind's not ready for it, and maybe that's true, but I digress. So the point I do on these shows is to look for these pieces that don't fit in the normal So you'll see shows like on YouTube. We have shows, a lot of them, with Douglas Dietrich. I've been fascinated with him because his pieces do not fit in the modern theories of everything from World War II to Roswell and other things. So that's why it's great to put that out there, because it stirs up that mix. A great book that I read was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And, of course, there's a story in there that carries as a venue for the philosophy. But when you figure out the philosophy parts in it, it's those people who are on the edge, who are the criminals, who are the prophets, who are the psychics or psychos, who push that envelope that will challenge the reality that we're in so we can better understand it and become more real, actually. That's why reality shows are such a crime, is because the reality shows are so unreal. I mean, first off, you're going to have someone come in your house with a bunch of broadcast equipment and you're supposed to act normal. So, I mean, just the premise of it is not real, let alone any kind of scripting and adding that has been shown to be in a lot of those. So it's pretty amazing what the term real has come. A nice book by Dr. Rita Louise, a longtime guest on my show, is Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4. That's that reality that will hit you if you're not in tune with it. A lot of people will use your unreal position to get what they want. Predators will use that unreal position. That's why you look at people who are judges, priests, police in the protectorate position will use your belief system against you to make reality. Again, I digress, which is not uncommon. But what we need to do is to look at the issues without bias, look at the evidence, and then test it in a real situation. And I think that what you will find is you'll find a more grounded, it doesn't mean conventional. Believe me, when you test reality with conventional wisdom, you test its reality, I should say, you're going to find out that a lot of that conventional wisdom has some tweaking to do, at least that. So that's what we do here. I say we, but I should clarify that it's me. I'm a one-horse show here. I do all the guest research, though I do want to preface that I have a lot of help from the listeners, which I thank, but I decide who's on there. I have my system here of producing the audio and video that I use on it. So and I build the websites and whatnot. So in the last few years, it's been a little tough because of my business situation. I drive over the road in a truck, which I had to switch places because of the economy and whatnot. And so I've been putting a lot of hours in, which has been really kind of affecting how I could put the show together. So that's a problem that hopefully we can work out. And one of the things about this YouTube I was going to might help is I could put together some shows on a semi-regular basis that I can go into detail with evidence and backup and so forth. And if you want to look at some of the Dietrich videos, you can see what I'm talking about. It's like fooling around starting, we'll say. So the what I want to say as far as the New Year's message is that we're in great flux now. It doesn't take a genius to see what's going on in the world. But I've come up with this view at how to find out truth. A lot of times, all we can figure out is we can take the incoming information and we could apply it to known paradigms. For example, don't know if this is true or not, but there's a story that when the Europeans first came to America, many of the indigenous people could not see the ships. They didn't understand. The paradigm was so away from their knowledge of their reality, they couldn't relate to it. It was undescribable, and allegedly some of the shaman were able to explain it to them. Whatever. Now, whether that's true or not, I like that at least example, because if you look, for example, of the train going across, the indigenous Americans, they call it Iron Horse. Well, because their paradigm of a horse going across, and it was iron and steel or what have you. See that they're taking their paradigm and doing it, and so on. Well, of course, everyone does this. We do this all the time. We've done it for thousands of years, and we have to be aware of that. So when we look into, for example, the whole 9/11 myth was sold on the public based on the inherent belief by the masses that the Arab terrorists did this. Now, if you would have said picked some of the most upstanding, wonderful people you could think of, and they were fingered to do this, it would be harder to sell. But they've already plowed the ground under. You had the Iran terror kidnapping. You have these. You have go back centuries to the trips from England to release the Holy Land. You have a whole history, a paradigm history that can be exploited to position, and your brains are checked at the door, because here you have this disaster. You're emotionally upset by the disaster. You see the people going around in the world. You see the buildings falling, people dying. You see the stuff, and then they come in and say, "Yeah, it's them people over there who did it." Sleight of hand. It's a magician. They move the hand. It's like, not this hand. This hand did it, but this hand is the one being portrayed while this hand does it. And so if you think about it for, I don't know, probably a minute, you're talking about people who are alleged to live in caves and have all this type of primitive world, being able to go into the so-called most sophisticated military and in the world and actually plan this attack perfectly, combined with a military operation going on, looking for the same thing that caught it. And the evidence that comes up is just it's ridiculous. You have pilots who barely flew a propeller plane, piloting a plane, doing a 360-degree barrel roll or 270-degree barrel roll, and flies 100 feet off the ground, and hits a building on a particular side that would be harder to hit than just coming down through the top. I mean, you have all these things. When you put it all together, you can't check your brain at the door. You got to go, wait, there's something else here. and you played it out. I played it out into everything. And one of the things I want to get at here in the upcoming future is that everyone is sensing something's going to happen. You have people thinking there's going to be solar flares. You have people thinking that the Planet X is going to come, Nibiru and all that stuff. And no matter how much times Planet X doesn't come, it's like the Energizer Bunny, new incoming data rekindles that. You have the return of Jesus. That's been going on for hundreds of years, thousands of years. You have the beginning of a lot of established churches now, like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormon Church, others, who came about in the flux of a time. You have the Jehovah's Witnesses, if my history is correct, that was the whole point, is that they were waiting for the return of Jesus. So when it doesn't happen, that paradigm is now being tested. And when you're talking about God and faith, it's easy to push the brain away and then plow forward, and now Jesus came in a spiritual manner and blah, blah, blah. You have Harold Camping most recently. Actually, he came out in 85, I think it was, or was it 95? 85. With the return of Christ, had all these things built up from the Bible to prove it. Didn't happen. And he came back a couple years ago, same deal, didn't happen. You have the Mayan calendar stuff. That was going to happen. It didn't happen as presented. Well, it came spiritually, or, and it's not that the people were wrong, is that perhaps they were sensing something like allegedly the Native Americans who didn't understand in their paradigm the ship. And so what I think is coming, it's so powerful and so universally effective, perhaps because of our universal media and our connections. We can take our little phone here and just call around the world and tweet and twit and all the other things. So you have this, and that could help this. But you have this almost universal, something's going to happen. A collapse in a monetary system, a nuclear war. You have all these subplots coming up there. And you know what? Here's what I want to add to it. I think that what is on the horizon is unfamiliar with us as a race of human beings. either is so far back in a previous civilization of humans that it happened, that it had the reset button was hit, so to speak, that it barely, almost nothing has gotten through. Legends are even legends of legends that don't even meet the mark anymore. And you may have a biological awareness, you have a psychic awareness of something, there's energy happening. I have a theory which people like Cliff High, for example, use in his Half-Path Human, where events that happen in the future put ripples. They put ripples forward in time. For example, something happens in your life, you're robbed, you have had that event, and that event the next day has an effect, and the next day has an effect, and so forth. There's a ripple forward. Well, I submit that there's a ripple backwards as well, except we're not conscious of it, and we don't have a paradigm to be able to look into it. So we may have this weird feeling, and what is it? And we will then take that feeling and start to bring it into an existence in an explanation with the paradigm we're in. So when you have this event coming in the future and you are a Planet X follower, you're going to understand it and interpret it in terms of Planet X. If you're a believer of the premillennial return of Christ, you're going to then put that in those terms. If you are focused on a nuclear war, you'll put it in those terms. Of economics, you put it in those terms. Now, all those things may be intertwined, or some of them. It may be that those things are happening at this time, coincidentally or otherwise, because of this coming event rippling and people making decisions and causing these events. Paranoia might run high because you have this thing in the background. So I would submit, from doing this for a while, and this is why this is my 2014 message, is rather than look at a Planet X or look at a Return of Jesus person and dismiss them because it didn't happen as they said. I'm going to go back to Aesop's fables and other things. We, for many years, as human race, have learned by stories, containers that contain a principle. And we never worried about whether the container was true or not. We learned the lesson from it. Well, I'm saying somewhere around the press, the invention of the printing press, and the ability to reproduce things exactly, we moved to start to look at the letters in the word rather than the principles that are taught. And so now we examine things in terms of, do all these facts line up? They don't. What's wrong? We throw it out. But on the other hand, contradicting our own points, current philosophies, from everything from the way the universe was formed to 9/11 to what's going on in the Mideast, we're taking the evidence and only taking ones we want to fit our paradigm. So on one hand, we're pointing at that person and they're going, oh, they're wrong. On the other hand, we're doing the same thing in our own way. But it's okay because our pieces fit and we don't see the ones. So we'll turn around and look at them and say, it doesn't fit, and throw them out rather than go like, okay, maybe they got something. Maybe they got a piece of this puzzle that's coming. They have a piece of the future issue that's coming. And rather than just criticize them and write them off, let's look at their perspective. What are they saying? Look at some of the things in there that can be generally brought in to start to build a picture. And that's what I've been doing myself and contemplating the thousands of miles that I've been driving, as well as dealing with the people on the show, is that something is coming on the horizon that is so dynamic and so unexplainable paradigmically, if that's such a word, that we have to take it and put it in, eliminate some data and fit it in a mold. Of course, the whole idea of defining God is that at all, because God unknowable in a totality, but we want to know God, so we take certain human traits, put it on God, bring them in, and say God is this, God is that. Guys with a beard, vengeful, whatever. God is you. You know, there's all these various subtexts, which there are aspects of it that you can try and rebuild, and that's another thing that I've been doing and we'll be doing shows on, is I've kind of come up with a theology that fits, I think, better than current ones. Not saying it's right. I'm saying it may fit better, and that somebody can come along and weed out my paradigm limits and so forth. So that's what I would say. So when you see the things that are happening and you see people's reactions to it, there's two things I'd like to suggest. One, there are people who are lying purposely because they have an agenda. They have a parasitical agenda of using you to get their goals. So you have corporate news media, you have politics, you have religious organizations that are going to use you to be their worker bees and keep you in a particular paradigm. And a lot of times they don't care about the paradigm. It's like, okay, if you're in a Christian paradigm, then the Christian predators will manipulate you. If you're in a Muslim one, the Muslim will do it. If you're in a Republican, Democrat, those people will use that, and so forth. So it's a question of we have to always question our authorities' statements because most likely a good portion of those people are psychopathic in that their goals and means are what they want and you don't count. Whether they think you're subhuman or they just are self-enamored, they're going to look for what they do. And that's everywhere. It's, well, not in a Baptist church, yes. Not in a court of law, yes. Not in this country, that country, yes. All everywhere. All governments, all law situations attract the psychopaths who want power to do what they want and not be doing. The Anti-Defamation League, a great spot for someone to hide who is a fascist or whatever the word would be against to use this. No, you're picking on Jews if you look for a bad individual who happens to be Jewish. A black organization for black rights. All of these people have been picked on. But it's a great spot for someone to get into to do their dirty work, and then they can throw up the, no, you're prejudice. Business, well, it's good business. No, I'm only doing business. So you're buying and selling, closing companies, putting people out of work who has given them 20 years. They've decided to latch on to your system and give them, well, we've paid them, didn't we? Throw them out because it's economically better for you to get a better return on that. It's just business. It's not personal. Everybody's paradigms do this kind of thing. So that's one of the problems with really trying to find truth is that everybody's wrong and everybody has some matter of right. And you have to check your own paradigm at the door. When you start out Truth Seeker, I guarantee that your belief system, your paradigm, your worldview will not be the same if you really commit yourself to finding truth and finding looking at the evidence in a non-contradictory way. And people will say that. One of the opening things in Atlas Shrugs, for example, is about non-contradictory. I read the book. I was like stunned. It was taking words out of my own mouth. I'm like, I never read the book, and I'm saying these things. Well, of course, the principle is fine, but of course, they are above it. All right, we had a pause there. So I'm going to have to review the video to see if it's still recorded or not. But as I was mentioning in Atlas Shrugs, there was this these principles, but they were above it. You see, now, there's a group of people on this planet. If you go back to the making of the United States, you've heard of a religious system called deists. These deists think that God made the world and made the clockwork, the rules, and then either died or has moved on and went on to other things, and they are trying to fill that position. Well, deism has died out, but it didn't. You see, it just morphed into something more subtle. So you have the so-called Illuminati and all these other things, which are people, again, these are all words people latch onto and get subtext, subsections of the truth. You have these group of people who feel that they are superior, and they are trying to fill in the position of God. A lot of them are going to try to make machines to be able to download their consciousness into it so they can live forever, essentially, which I find so ridiculous that I can't even, I can't even entertain. They can't even figure out how the mind retains things, let alone download it into a system, assuming even your consciousness is really a sum of your whole, of your memories and your minds. Anyway, I don't get bogged down in that. But they think that they are better than, they are higher than. And to prove that, go look at things like Jerry Springer show. Go look at Maury Povich. Those shows' purpose are to say, yeah, you think you regular human beings are human beings? check out these people. And you look at them and go, boy, these people are, that's what they think you are, and they're just giving you examples. They're looking at taking over things and running their own system. Of course, there's such a small number of people that we have the masses against over them. If we're aware of it, what can they do? Because no matter what, they haven't got to a technological position where they can control you by technology yet, which is why we have to do things with, like Edward Snowden about spying and the technology. We have to put the lid on that because the psychopaths do want to take over. So you have the modern day deists are the people who are going to go into some type of control system and think that they can live forever. It's nutty. But again, there is, in the past, I would submit, in the past, there has been some reset button that in the events, and I can go into, I won't go into it now, I don't have time, but in the future, the shows that I do on a topic of basically what the soul and life and the earth and all, why this all is that it's a choice between helping each other, love, and selfishness, evil, light and darkness. Light gives off energy. Light shows knowledge. Light opens up. Darkness sucks everything in. Darkness uses it. These are all analogs for a reason. This is what the deal is that how can we get through 2014? Helping one another, solving problems with each other, not blaming each other, realizing each of us has a key to putting together a better worldview, working out the fun. Don't trust authority. Look to find realness in evidence of whatever you think is true. Find consistency. More importantly, find contradiction and figure it out why. Figure out why this contradiction is. And it'll expose all the plans for those who are trying to manipulate and so forth. I got a little distracted from that little glitch in the program, and I'll have to look to see how it is. But I just wanted to put this down here first, give a little introduction to the show for those interested. And also, when you look forward into upcoming years, think that there is something on the horizon that is hard to describe, perhaps never happened before, and that this information is bleeding through. And you also have these superhuman, quote unquote, or so they think, people who may also be aware of this issue and need to get into a certain position of control to try and ride it through. And, of course, the thing that's coming may even be what I just said. It may be them trying to get in a position to control the earth. And we're sensing this. So be open to what items are, but don't just let anybody say, well, that's the way it is. An angel told me, God told me, I found this ancient tablet, but I can't show it to you. I got this writing here. I got this copy of something that's been copied from an ancient work, but I can't prove it really existed. All these things are used in manipulation and controlling. And when someone says that they're a prophet of God, it doesn't mean like prove it by doing some magic, because there are things people can do, sleight of hand, that could give the illusion of it. Their works will tell you, are they helping individuals, or are they making them own, are they building own statues to themselves? Are they do they own corporations that use people in other countries at cheap labor? So they do that. And these are the things to really set it up. And when you are a stockholder and you find out that this company is using Chinese labor at very low prices and losing American jobs, and you're saying that's okay because it's business, guess what, parasite or predator? You've just unmasked yourself. You have to realize that everybody around this whole planet deserves fairness, not just your race or your country or the people who you think are on your level. And these are the things that are being exposed in the media. Alternative media in particular. And then you got to watch alternative media because, of course, if you can't stop something, the way to get people to not listen is pollute it. So when you hear people talking about, I have a jump room to Mars and I saw myself as, I worked with the president on Mars, or you hear these things, you go, wait a minute. I can't accept this as it's said. I need to have more to it. And make that stand. Hold people's feet to the fire so that the pollution can't just go through. But in the same breath, think about what they're saying. Maybe their whole container is wrong, but there might be something behind it. So you say, wow, that's complicated. It's a pain in the neck. Well, that's what happens when you want really freedom. You want the reality to choose and learn. You have to do the work. I can't do it for you. You can't trust anybody in the government. You can't trust people in academia. You can't trust science. You can't trust anybody blanketly. But on the other hand, you don't want to rule anybody out. You want to look at the data, check it against reality, see how it fits, and then say, you know what? This works for now. In closing, I probably want to say, people say, well, it's truth and all that. There's basically two kind of truths, I say. There's the capital T truth. I guess it would be this way. Where people are, this is the absolute real, honest to God, boom, truth. And then there's the little t truth, that it works within the paradigm, within the amount of data you have and your intellect and your ability to information. So it works for now, but it's always going to be updated, getting closer to the capital T. May never even reach it. Maybe the capital T is so beyond our comprehension that certain capital T's are infinitely away from us, but our journey to it is all about life. And constantly update and upgrade your T. Now, I started out being a somewhat a fundamental Baptist, and now I've come around to a point where I have a greater understanding of who Jesus was and what he meant, that I would go against both. Baptists would be against me, as well as the liberal Christian or atheist, because their paradigms don't fit what I'm doing. But my paradigm and what I can explain how it fits out there. May not accept it, and maybe parts of it are applicable, but it's up to you to listen to it. So I'll be doing that. I'll be doing my own segments on my theology, theosophy, and philosophy in life, why I do this, where it is, and that'll be my thing. Plus, I'll be peppered with guests and continue. So I wanted to take this time to do this little message and welcome you to the YouTube channel, as well as the show, Feet to Fire, starting its 12th year, 11 years, on January 5th, 2014 will be the actual anniversary. But we will do a show this, let's see, I'm not even sure what the date is for how about that? This Sunday is the actual literal anniversary. So this Sunday, January 5th, and of course you're watching this after the fact, archives will be available. So, I think I want to end here and again mention people that you could listen live on Sunday nights. Most of the time we do this. We don't have a video stream all the time, but we do when possible. You can contact me at F2F, that's the number 2 F2F, at Innersights, INNERSITES.com. The website, Feet to the Fire Radio, has all the information that you can deal with it. You can listen live. You can listen on your phones. You can listen after it's done in archive form, both on your phones, tablets, and on your computer. We have guests, live guests. We'll do Skype when we do. We'll have I guess it's over here. We'll have a Skype view when possible. Then we'll be able to do that. And that's it. We welcome, give us any guest suggestions. We can put it together. Any people like to help out with working on a show, because again, it's one guy here doing it all. Just remember that all things are open for scrutiny. There's good and bad in all. There's information and garbage in all, and shouldn't throw it all out, but weed through it. It's kind of a dirty business, but somebody has to do it. And, well, I guess that's my calling here, or my gig. Alrighty. Feet to the Fire, reach for the skies within, and we'll see you.
My old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walked again, the ancient one of old. with wisdom for the new. Revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, it's your word.
Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the Jancik Radio network of stations.